They called me a disgrace before hearing a single truth. I still remember that night, the sound of forks clattering, the whispers stopping, the way every pair of eyes at the table turned toward me like I was some stain on their perfect world. My own mother's voice trembled with anger, not pain, when she said it. "You've ruined our family's name, Lila." And I just stood there, numb, wondering when love turned into performance. For years, I believed respect was something we built together, one act of loyalty, one word of kindness at a time. But in my family, respect was a mask, and the moment I didn't fit their picture, they tore me apart to protect it. I didn't cry that night. Not because I was strong, but because I was broken in a way tears couldn't fix. Betrayed not by strangers, but by the people I would have bled for. They said I brought shame. I whisper now. But they never asked who planted it. Because what they called disgrace was only the beginning of my revenge. People say the Carters were the kind of family others admired. Polite smiles, perfect Sunday dinners, matching smiles in family photos. But what they didn't see were the cracks hidden behind the silverware and forced laughter. We didn't talk about problems. We performed harmony. And I was the best actress of them all. I'm Lila, the eldest daughter. I grew up believing it was my duty to protect our family's reputation, to never raise my voice, to always say thank you even when my heart hurt. My mother, Evelyn, was the queen of appearances, elegant, sharp-tongued, obsessed with what neighbors thought. Respect, she used to say, isn't given, it's displayed. I spent years trying to be the display she wanted. My father, Thomas, was quiet, a man who nodded more than he spoke. If my mother ruled the house, he enforced her silence. My sister, Maya, was the opposite of me, carefree, adored, and untouchable. When she broke rules, it was called youth. When I tried to speak, it was called defiance. Still, I tried. I stayed late after family dinners to clean the kitchen, helped Mom organize her charity drives, even skipped weekends with friends to manage errands. I thought maybe if I stayed useful, I'd stay loved. But in our home, love was conditional. It depended on how perfectly you served the family's image. I remember one afternoon, during a family reunion. The house smelled like roast beef and candles. Relatives filled every corner, laughing, praising how graceful Maya looked in her new dress. I stood beside the table arranging plates when Aunt Nora said, "Lila, you should take notes from your sister. She knows how to turn heads." Everyone laughed. I smiled, pretending it didn't sting. That's how it always was. Maya's mistakes were cute, mine were scandals waiting to happen. But I never envied her. I envied the freedom of being forgiven. When I met Ethan, things felt different. He saw me, or at least, I thought he did. My parents adored him because he was ambitious, well-spoken, the perfect match for their ideal daughter. For the first time, I felt seen not for what I did, but who I was. The engagement felt like my chance to belong, to finally earn the approval that had always stayed out of reach. But even then, there were signs I ignored. Mom would say, Maya would have looked stunning in that ring. Aunt Nora would joke that Ethan's attention was training Lila to be graceful. I laughed along, swallowing the bitterness. Every Sunday dinner felt like a test, my posture, my tone, my smile. I became an expert at hiding exhaustion behind politeness. But deep down, something inside me was breaking, slowly, quietly. Then one evening, while setting the dinner table, I overheard my mother's voice in the next room. "We'll have to keep an eye on Lila," she whispered. "She's too proud lately. People might start talking." That sentence froze me in place, like I was an outsider in my own home. And in that single moment, I realized something deeper was wrong. Much deeper. It started with whispers, the kind that move faster than truth ever can. A rumor, small enough to be ignored, yet sharp enough to wound. It was about money. My father had decided to divide a part of his business shares early, just for convenience, he said. Maya was to receive her portion first, a gesture of trust, apparently, because she was handling things responsibly. I was told mine would come later, after the wedding. "You'll have a husband to help you manage it," Mom said, smiling that thin, patronizing smile she reserved for moments of dismissal. It stung, but I didn't argue. I had learned that in our house, questioning anything was seen as disrespect. So I stayed quiet, swallowing the bitterness like medicine. But things changed when the gossip began, that I had taken money from one of Ethan's business rivals. It was absurd. I didn't even handle Ethan's work. Yet, somehow, everyone seemed to know this secret. It began with Aunt Nora. One afternoon, I overheard her talking to my mother in the kitchen. "You know, Evelyn, people are saying Lila's getting too involved in Ethan's deals. She's not married yet, but already acting like she owns the company." My mother sighed dramatically, like a queen tired of scandal. I told her to stay modest. But pride always ruins a woman sooner or later. I stood behind the doorway, holding a tray of tea, my hands trembling. I wanted to step in, to defend myself, but something inside me froze. Maybe I thought silence would make it go away. It didn't. Soon, even Ethan seemed distant. He started canceling dinner plans, avoiding conversations about the wedding. When I finally confronted him, his eyes wouldn't meet mine. "Your family's been asking questions," he said quietly, "about where some of my funding came from. They think you might have." I cut him off. "You think I took money? From your rival? Ethan, are you serious?" He rubbed his forehead. "Lila, I don't know what to think anymore. Just talk to your mother. Clear things up." Clear things up? As if this was some minor misunderstanding. But when I went to my mother, she only looked at me like I was a stranger. "Did you?" she asked flatly. "Did I what?" "Take money. From someone connected to Ethan's competitor. Nora said you've been asking too many business questions. And you've been spending more lately." I felt my throat close. "Mom, I used my savings to buy your anniversary gift. You think I'd trade my dignity for money?" Her lips tightened. "Dignity doesn't fix reputation, Lila." That night, something inside me cracked. Every word felt like a verdict before a trial. Days turned into weeks. Every family gathering became quieter when I walked in. Maya, with her sweet little smile, offered fake sympathy. "You know, Lila, maybe if you were less proud, people wouldn't misunderstand you." I stared at her across the table. "Or maybe if people weren't so eager to believe lies, there'd be nothing to misunderstand." Her smile didn't fade. "Some of us don't have to prove innocence, sis. We're just trusted." The room went silent. Even Dad avoided my eyes. Later that night, I found a message slipped under my bedroom door, an anonymous note that said, "We know what you did. The truth will come out." My heart pounded. My hands shook as I read it again and again, realizing someone in my own family wanted me destroyed. I walked downstairs, ready to confront whoever it was, but stopped when I heard laughter. Maya's, Aunt Nora's, and my mother's. Their voices echoed through the hall, soft and cruel. "She'll break soon," Nora said. "Pride always makes the fall louder." And in that moment, standing in the dark, listening to the people I loved plan my humiliation, I finally understood. This wasn't about a rumor. It was a setup. And I was their target. After that night, everything changed, not in explosions, but in the quiet, painful ways that only families know how to destroy you. Suddenly, I was invisible. Conversations stopped when I entered a room. The laughter that used to fill our dinners turned into whispers. Even the house felt colder, like it had expelled me from its warmth. Mom stopped asking for my help with her charity events. Maya, meanwhile, was suddenly her golden child. Planning fundraisers, attending meetings, posing for photos like the perfect daughter. My name was no longer mentioned, and when it was, it came with hesitation. One afternoon, at a small family brunch, I placed a tray of drinks on the table, and Aunt Nora smirked. "Careful, Lila. We wouldn't want people thinking you paid for those." The whole table chuckled softly. Even my mother smiled. That laugh, it burned deeper than any insult. I didn't say a word. I just sat down, staring at my untouched plate, feeling like every breath I took offended them. My father didn't look up once. Later, Ethan joined one of those brunches, distant, polite, almost like a guest instead of my fiancé. I tried to act normal, tried to touch his hand, but he pulled it away gently, saying, "Let's not make things uncomfortable." Uncomfortable. That was his word for betrayal. When Maya walked into the room wearing the same bracelet Ethan had given me months ago, my chest tightened. I asked, "Where did you get that?" She smiled, tilting her head. "Oh, Ethan said it didn't suit you anymore. He wanted someone to actually wear it." The silence after that was unbearable. I could feel everyone watching, waiting for me to react. But I didn't. I just stood up, walked out, and locked myself in the guest room. I cried for hours, Not because of the bracelet, but because of what it symbolized, how easily they could take pieces of me and hand them away. Days turned into weeks, and the humiliation grew bolder. At a charity dinner, I overheard my mother speaking to one of her friends.
"We're still trying to handle the mess quietly.
Lila's situation has been difficult for us all." Her friend placed a hand over her chest. "Oh, poor thing. Must be hard having a daughter like that." Mom just sighed and said, "It's not her fault. Some people just don't know how to protect family dignity." I wanted to scream, to tear that fake sympathy apart, but I stayed frozen. My entire life, I'd been taught that silence meant grace, and that night, I realized silence was just another word for submission.
When I returned home, I found a new envelope on my dresser.
Inside was a photograph, a blurry image of me meeting Dean, my old college friend. On the back, someone had written, "So this is where the money comes from?" That's when I knew the rumors weren't dying. They were being fed, deliberately, cruelly, from inside my own family. I confronted my mother again, holding the photo out. "You think this is proof? You'd rather believe gossip than your own daughter." She didn't even flinch. "You've embarrassed us enough, Lila. We can't keep defending you." Her words were like knives. "Defending me?" I whispered. "You're the one spreading it." The room fell silent. Her expression didn't change, but for the first time, I saw a flicker of guilt or fear. That night, I sat by my window, watching the lights of the neighborhood houses flicker in the distance. Behind me, the sound of my family laughing drifted up the stairs, like a cruel reminder of how replaceable I had become. I wiped my tears and whispered to myself, "They think I'll stay quiet forever. They don't know what silence can turn into." Because at that moment, beneath the heartbreak, beneath the humiliation, something inside me shifted. The pain was still there, but now it had a purpose. And soon, they were going to feel it too. It happened on the night that was supposed to be mine, the engagement dinner. The one I'd dreamed of since I was a little girl, watching my parents toast to anniversaries and achievements under crystal chandeliers. I thought this night would finally be the one where I'd feel accepted. Where the whispers would stop. Where my mother would look at me and see her proud, worthy daughter again. Instead, it became the night they buried me alive. The hall was glowing, filled with relatives, business partners, and friends. Everyone was dressed in gold and silver, laughter spilling across the room. For a few fleeting minutes, I let myself believe things were back to normal. I wore the soft lavender gown Ethan said made me look peaceful. I smiled for photos, thanked guests, and ignored the anxious flutter in my chest. Then my mother clinked her glass. The sound silenced the room. "Before we begin," she said, her voice clear and composed, "there's something I must address, something painful, but necessary. As a family, we believe in honesty and respect." I froze. My heart thudded. I looked toward Ethan, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. Mom continued, "It's come to our attention that certain inappropriate actions have taken place. Financial misconduct, dishonesty, betrayal of trust." A murmur swept through the room. I felt my pulse quicken. "No. Not here. Not now." She turned toward me, calm, cold, merciless. "Lila, dear. I think you owe everyone here an explanation." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" "You know what this is," she said softly. "You've been taking money from people connected to Ethan's rivals. We've seen the proof." "Proof?" I choked. "There is no proof, because it's not true." Aunt Nora stood, waving a few printed pages, fake bank transfers, blurry screenshots. "Then how do you explain this? Your name, your account, those transactions." Gasps filled the hall. Cameras clicked. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." I turned to Ethan. "You know I'd never." He stepped back. His eyes looked hollow. "Lila, I don't know what to believe anymore." It felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. My mother's voice sliced through the noise. "For the sake of our family's reputation, we cannot ignore this any longer. This engagement is officially called off." Laughter stopped. Applause from earlier died. And in that silence, the kind that makes your own heartbeat sound deafening, I realized it was over. I stood there, trembling, surrounded by the very people who had once called me our pride. Now, they couldn't even look at me. "I didn't do this," I whispered, but no one listened. My father wouldn't lift his gaze. Grandma Helen sat motionless, lips pressed tightly together, tears glistening in her eyes. And then Maya, perfect, delicate Maya, stepped forward, pretending to comfort me. Lila, maybe it's better to just admit what happened. People will forgive faster if you're honest. I turned to her slowly, my voice breaking. You did this. Her expression didn't change.
You always think someone's out to get you.
Maybe this time, you just got caught.
The crowd began murmuring again.
My body felt cold, my breathing shallow. I looked at Ethan one last time. He wouldn't even meet my eyes. So I straightened my back, lifted my chin, and said, "You're all protecting a lie. And one day, it'll destroy every one of you." Then I walked out, heels clicking against the marble floor, the sound of whispers chasing me down the hallway like ghosts. Outside, the night air hit me like ice. I stood beneath the shimmering lights of the city, staring at my reflection in a window, the woman who'd just been stripped of everything. My dignity, my love, my name. I didn't go home that night. I sat in my car for hours, watching the rain blur the streets. My phone buzzed over and over, calls, messages, headlines spreading the scandal. I read one. Carter heiress accused of corruption, engagement cancelled. That word, heiress, hit me like irony. Because the next morning, I learned I wasn't one anymore. Dad had signed new papers. The shares that were meant for me were transferred to Maya. I had been officially removed from the family's inheritance. No phone call. No explanation. Just a lawyer's letter that said, the decision reflects the family's need to preserve its integrity. Integrity. I laughed through tears. The kind of laugh that hurts your ribs because it's the only thing keeping you from screaming. Days turned into weeks. Friends stopped calling. Neighbors looked at me with pity. Even co-workers avoided eye contact, as if betrayal was contagious. I was alone. Completely, utterly alone. For a while, I let the silence consume me. I stayed in my small apartment, replaying every word, every lie, every moment I ignored my instincts to keep the peace. I blamed myself, for believing them, for loving them, for thinking blood meant loyalty. But then, something shifted. One evening, as I scrolled through another article mocking my fall from grace, I stopped on a photo, Maya and my mother, smiling at a gala, wearing the same necklace Ethan once gave me. The caption read, "The Carter women rise stronger than ever." And that's when it hit me. They hadn't just ruined me. They'd rewritten the story, painted themselves as victims and me as the villain. But stories can be rewritten again. I looked at their smiling faces, my reflection dimly mirrored in the screen, and whispered to myself, they took everything, but they forgot one thing. My truth. And that's the day I promised myself, I would take it back. Every lie, every humiliation, every stolen piece of my name. Justice was no longer a hope. It became my mission. The days after the disinheritance were a strange, sharpened quiet, like the world had been cleared away and left me with nothing but the raw edges of my anger. For a long time, I held on to that emptiness like a secret. Then I turned it into a map. Pain taught me how to focus. Betrayal taught me where the knives had come from. I started tracing them back, one careful step at a time. I stopped trying to beg for explanations. Begging was the voice of someone who trusted the very people who stabbed her. Instead, I learned to watch. I watched my mother's calls, watched Aunt Nora's sudden charitable contributions, watched the timing of transfers and the friendly smiles that followed them. I asked questions in small places where nobody thought to look, the charity treasurer's office, the gala volunteer list, the petty ledgers no one bothered to lock. Every answer was a breadcrumb. Dean came back into my life not as a comfort but as a tool. He was the one who reminded me how to be strategic. You don't need to shout, Lila, he said softly the first night we met in a coffee shop, his fingers wrapped around a cup like it anchored him. You need proof, patience, and the right stage. That settled inside me. Proof, patience, stage. I repeated those words like a prayer. I collected things quietly. Copies of emails where Maya coached witnesses to lie, a ledger that showed a charity donation routed through an account tied to Aunt Nora, voice notes where my mother suggested handling the problem before it became public. I didn't break into anyone's phone. I simply coaxed truth from people tired of pretending. The assistant who'd been paid to type the fake transfer emails, the caterer who'd seen papers switched at last year's gala. They felt small, hesitant at first, but when I offered them a way to be honest without being attacked, they did. There was risk in every step. Once, I sat in my car outside Aunt Nora's townhouse for an hour, heart thudding as she walked in with a bag of groceries, her face open and kind in the way liars practice. I could have been seen, photographed, turned into the villain again. That fear taught me to be careful, to hide in plain sight, to script my patience. My revenge wasn't about public spectacle for spectacle's sake.
It was surgical.
I wanted the full picture exposed, the emails, the transfers, the encouragements to lie, all of it assembled so no one could gaslight the truth away. I imagined standing in a room where the faces that had condemned me watched their own hands on the evidence.
The thought steadied me. There were nights I almost faltered.
I thought of my grandmother's tired eyes, of my father's silence, and for a moment the old longing to be forgiven crept back in. But forgiveness without truth felt like surrender. I wanted my name back, not their pity. So I kept piling the evidence together, labeling files, recording timestamps, lining up witnesses who hated the idea of being puppets. I rehearsed the reveal in my head 100 different ways. Would I hand the proof to a reporter? Would I file a formal complaint? Would I make a quiet, private deposit of truth in the family's safe? Dean argued for a controlled, public moment, evidence and audio played where it couldn't be ignored. I could see the charity gala, lights, cameras, the faces of my family in close-up as the truth played like a mirror.
This is dangerous, Dean warned. You could lose more than money. They'll fight back.
I already lost everything, I answered, voice steady. This is the only way I get it back. Every time I said that, the brittle part of me softened into something colder and clearer. I wasn't reckless, I was deliberate. I had turned my humiliation into a blueprint. The files were ready. The witnesses were nervous but willing. The stage, the charity gala that my mother adored, was where they felt safest, and that made it perfect. Tonight, the room would be full of people who had applauded my destruction. I sat in the dark of my apartment, papers spread like a constellation. My pulse thrummed with the measured calm of someone who has finally found a direction. I stood, smoothed my dress, and reached for my phone. Outside, the city hummed with indifferent life. Inside, I felt very small and very enormous at once. I breathed in, and the line in my head hardened into a promise. Tonight, I whispered, and then, louder to myself, I will make them hear me. The night of the charity gala shimmered with false perfection. Golden lights hung from the ceiling like the universe was trying too hard to be kind. Laughter echoed, glasses clinked, and every smile looked polished to hide its guilt. It was the same event where, a year ago, my mother had announced my engagement, the night they turned me into a scandal. Tonight, I would return the favor. I walked in silently, dressed in black, not for mourning, but for truth. Dean waited near the sound booth, pretending to chat with the event coordinator. The drive here had been calm. Too calm. Like the air before a storm finally decides to break. From the stage, my mother's voice floated through the speakers. We are proud to continue our legacy of honesty, generosity, and respect.
Respect.
The word scraped against my skin like a blade.
The applause swelled. Cameras flashed.
Maya stood beside her, radiant in her designer gown, wearing the same diamond necklace that once hung around my neck.
I almost smiled. They had no idea what was coming. Dean caught my eye and gave a small nod.
The signal. The lights dimmed slightly, and the screens behind the stage flickered. My mother paused mid-sentence. The microphone hissed softly, then my voice, recorded from weeks ago, filled the hall.
They destroyed me with lies.
I'll destroy their lies with truth.
A collective gasp. Heads turned.
I stepped forward from the back of the hall, heels echoing like drumbeats of war. On the giant screen, emails appeared, dated, signed, undeniable.
Aunt Nora's messages to Maya. Tell your mother I've handled the transfers.
No one will question it if we say Lila was involved. Then came the voice recordings, my mother's tone, cold and careful.
Let it leak quietly. She needs to learn humility.
People respect the family more when one of us takes the fall.
Whispers erupted like wildfire. Guests shifted in their seats.
The flawless Carter image was cracking, publicly, loudly. My mother's face drained of color. Turn it off, she shouted at the technician. Dean spoke calmly into his mic. Everything you're seeing is verified and recorded.
No edits.
No fabrications. I walked to the stage, slow and steady, until I stood just a few feet away from her.
The lights glared down on both of us.
Mom, I said softly, microphone in hand.
You wanted honesty.
Here it is. Her lips trembled. You think this stunt, fixes anything? You've humiliated your family again.
I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. No, Mother.
I just returned what you gave me, humiliation.
Gasps.
Someone in the crowd muttered, Is this real? Oh, it's real, I said, turning toward them. Every document, every voice, every lie.
You all watched me fall without asking for the truth.
Tonight, you'll see who actually buried it. Maya tried to speak. Lila, stop. But I cut her off. No, you stop pretending. You wanted my place, my respect, my life. Now take the consequences too.
Her mask finally cracked.
You don't understand.
Oh, I understand perfectly. You were jealous, but you should have been smarter.
You built your house of lies inside a family obsessed with image, and I just smashed the mirror. The crowd erupted into murmurs, cameras flashing wildly. Aunt Nora tried to slip away, but reporters blocked the exit. The scene was chaos. Poetic, satisfying chaos. My mother stood frozen, her hand trembling as if to reach for me, but pride stopped her halfway. You think you've won, she whispered. I leaned closer so only she could hear. I don't need to win, Mother. I just needed you to lose the mask. The silence that followed was heavy, electric. Everyone was watching, but for the first time, I didn't care. I placed the microphone on the podium, straightened my shoulders, and said into the air, not to her, not to them, but to myself. Respect built on lies isn't respect at all. It's fear. And tonight, fear ends. Applause didn't come. Just shock. And the quiet, perfect collapse of everything they protected. As I walked off the stage, Dean met me near the exit. You did it, he whispered. I looked back one last time. At my mother's hollow stare, at Maya's crumbling poise, at the room of people finally seeing the truth. No, I said quietly. The truth did it. And as the doors closed behind me, the lights flickered once more, not from power failure, but from the weight of everything that had finally been exposed. That night, the Carter family's reputation didn't just fall. It shattered. The next morning, the city woke up to headlines that didn't belong to me anymore. They belonged to them. The Carter charity exposed for fraud and fabrication. Family reputation collapses amid leaked audio scandal. For years, their names had been spoken with admiration. Now they were whispered with pity. And I didn't smile when I read the news. I didn't celebrate. I just breathed. For the first time in years, the air felt clean. I walked down to the small cafe near my apartment, the same one I used to hide in after the engagement was broken. People still stared, but their eyes carried something different now. Not pity. Not judgment. Recognition. The truth had a strange kind of power. It didn't erase the scars, but it gave them meaning. Dean joined me at the table, his quiet presence a comfort I hadn't realized I'd grown used to. They are saying your mother stepped down from the board, he said softly. And Maya's disappeared from the city for a while. I nodded, staring at the steam rising from my cup. Good, I said. Maybe silence will finally teach them what respect really means. He hesitated. Do you feel better? I thought for a moment. Not better. Just lighter. Like I don't owe anyone an explanation anymore. The days that followed were strangely peaceful. Reporters called, lawyers tried to reach me, even my father left a voicemail. Just one. His voice cracked as he said, Lila, I should have listened. I didn't return the call. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't about letting others in again. It was about letting yourself move on. Weeks later, I drove to visit Grandma Helen. She opened the door with tears in her eyes but no words. She just held my hand, tighter than ever. You were right, she whispered. Silence protects lies. Speaking the truth, that's what saves dignity. I smiled faintly. I didn't want revenge, Grandma. I just wanted to stop hurting. She nodded. And you did. You stopped letting them define what respect means. That night, as I left her porch, I looked back at the old house glowing softly under the moonlight. For years, that house had felt like a prison of expectations. Now, it was just wooden walls, nothing more. I realized I had spent my whole life trying to make people proud who never wanted me whole, only polished, obedient, and quiet. And the moment I stopped performing, I became the villain in their story. But villains, I learned,
are just heroes who stop pretending. Sometimes, justice isn't loud. It doesn't come with applause or headlines.
It comes in the stillness that follows when the truth finally settles, when those who hurt you are left alone with their own reflection.
I didn't destroy them.
I simply revealed what they were willing to destroy to stay perfect. Before I left town, I returned to the charity hall one last time. Now empty, the lights dimmed, the echo of that night still haunting the air. I stood on the same stage where my mother had humiliated me and whispered the line that had carried me through everything. Respect built on fear will always collapse under truth. Then I walked away, not as the broken daughter they cast out, but as the woman who learned that dignity isn't something you protect for others.
It's something you reclaim for yourself.